Ajay was a true Democrat. I've said it earlier. It surprises me how much we differed in our views on privatization, social security, education, health, capitalism, and how easy it was to disagree with him. It was a great partnership I had with him for more than 4 decades, and at cost of repetition, I would say he was the complete Democrat I had known of. He was restless in the last year or two of Manthan, worried about the slow erosion of space for free speech, and believed strongly that we must be more vocal in expressing our worries about the happenings in the country. We always ask this question, are these changes which are happening in the country, are these going to be permanent? Can we trust the people of India to strengthen our democratic traditions? He always thought that we could trust the people. Ajay Memorial Lectures are a sure way of remembering his legacy and his faith in an open and a free society. We had PTR P. Tyagarajan, or the opening speech. Last year we had a wonderful speech from Suraj Yangde, and today we have Mr. Parakala Prabhakar, our own Hyderabadi, if you can call it, a renowned political economist and author. While he needs no introduction, and as you know in Manthan we have very, very short introductions, I must say I have seen every episode of his Patana Kutuhalam, and తెలుగు పైన ఎంత మాత్రం కొంచెమైనా ప్రేమ ఉంటే మీకు అందరికీ నేను మై రిక్వెస్ట్ ఈస్ మీరు అది పఠన కుతూహలం మాత్రం ప్రభాకర్ గారు తప్పకుండా చూడండి అని మనవి. ఇట్స్ హిస్ న్యూ బుక్ అండ్ హిస్ లేటెస్ట్ బుక్ ద క్రూకెడ్ టింబర్ ఆఫ్ న్యూ ఇండియా is a classic exposition of the current polity, and in his own words, when the timber itself is crooked, no carpenter can fashion anything straightened out of it. We thank you, Mr. Prabhakar, for accepting our invitation to be in Manthan, and we have been, I must confess also, we have been waiting for you for 15 years. Thank you and welcome.
This is an honor to me, especially to speak on an occasion that remembers Ajay Gandhi. I think I just met him once. A very warm and a vibrant mind. And we're all grateful to him for Manthan. And I know, especially last 1 year or so, I've been traveling quite a lot in the country, that spaces like these where we can exchange ideas, talk, debate, are shrinking. And my only hope is that this would stay alive forever. And that would be the right and a great tribute to Ajay Gandhi. Vikram told me that I could speak for about an hour or so, and he also said there is no limit, but then, of course, I would limit myself. I'm more interested in some kind of a dialogue after whatever I have to say to you, because this is Manthan, not Man Ki Baat. And I would be very discomfort. I mean, I have a lot of discomfort with this Man Ki Baat kind of a format. So let's have a Manthan. I have chosen unequal economy and majoritarian polity. At the outset, let me say that unequal economy and majoritarian polity are not events. They are processes. And I'm not here to delve and tell you when it started, how it started, and why it started, but it's enough for us now, for today's purposes, to understand that they have been there for a long time. They have been the processes. What is new, however, is that over the last decade or so, there has been a rising tolerance towards inequality and majoritarianism. There is a surge of tolerance or even acceptance. And of course, we have a lot of people who champion these two. They not only tolerate, they not only support, but they also very actively propagate this, and some of them actually, whom I did not suspect even a few years ago, have become evangelists of both inequality as well as majoritarianism. I must also tell you that I'm not trying to establish any causal link between majoritarianism and economic inequality, or economic inequality leading to majoritarianism, or majoritarianism leading to economic inequality. There are people who can do that, probably. But I am somebody who does not believe in rigid determinism. I believe in human agency. The process which started and which we see now had human agency, and if we do not want this, if we have to reverse this, that would also require human agency or political agency. My main submission today to you is that these two processes, majoritarianism and economic inequality, are mutually reinforcing. Economic inequality, I would try to argue, makes one much more ready to accept majoritarianism, and majoritarianism also makes one readily accept economic inequality. I'll explain why I think so. I have a disclosure to make. I'm not here to talk very objectively. I should tell you upfront my bias. I am not in favor of majoritarianism, and I am not in favor of inequality. I am rather against majoritarianism and against economic inequality, or social inequality, political inequality, etc., etc. This is very clear. I'm not trying to, very objectively examine the things and say whatever may be the reason, whatever may be the course of history, but I would rather argue this from a point of view that these two need to be opposed, these two need to be rolled back and reversed. That's my position. I'll spend some time on the economy, and then I would go to the polity and try to synthesize these two towards the end. To me, it appears today we have a regime, a dispensation, which has a very simple economic philosophy. To put it crudely, it is as follows. Give 5 kilos of food grains to poor people and give 5 airports to your friend. This seems to be the overall economic philosophy guiding the present regime. The reason why I say this is that some time back there were several reports, especially one coming from the World Inequality Lab led by Professor Thomas Piketty. It talked about the kind of economic inequality that is extant in India. Well, we'll come to the details, but the very important economic mandarins, whatever you call, the think tanks of this present regime, they think economic inequality is all right. It's cool. It's good. It's actually probably desirable. Many of you have heard the name of Professor Arvind Pangaria. He was the first vice chairman of the Niti Aayog, a very distinguished professor. I think now he is the Finance Commission chairman. He wrote a piece in the Times of India very soon after the World Inequality Lab's report came out. And it has a very interesting title. It said, "Don't lose sleep over inequality." Don't worry about it. It's all right. And the reason that he says it's all right is that, wealth creators, there are two or maybe more. The wealth creators, they create jobs. And if you do this equality thing and then bring them down, who will create jobs? Who will create wealth? And very significantly, he also said that sometimes these wealth creators might indulge in excess consumption. Probably when he wrote that, when he published it, we have the context, but when he wrote that, probably, because it takes time, between writing and getting it published, probably when he wrote that, he had no idea of the pre-wedding. And of course the wedding, he did not have an idea. Then there is the chairperson of the Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Council. He also said, don't worry about this. In fact, inequality is not something that one should be worried about. And there is a young and very articulate member of the Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Council. He said, in India, there is poverty of aspiration. People are not aspiring much. They are aspiring for small things, little things. Then he gives an example. He says in India, people, young people especially, are not burning with the desire to become somebody like Bill Gates or Jeff Bezos or Mark Zuckerberg. They want to be a writer, they want to be an advocate, they want to be a director, playwright, poet, trade union leader, lecturer, that kind of a thing. How poor? That's the poverty. So we should be worried about not inequality, but we should be worried about the poverty of aspiration. That is the one which is afflicting the Indian nation. The reason why I said this is, look at the kind of intellectual justification for the kind of inequality that we have. What kind of inequality do we have? In spite of whatever the government tells us, the government tells a lot of things, but you see, it's very difficult to trust the government figures. We had once a very robust and respected statistical architecture. The entire world, not only the third world countries, newly independent countries, but even the so-called first world countries also used to look at India for its best practices in collecting data on various things in the economy and the society. But now it's no longer. A lot of people feel that it is compromised. I also share that. So, be that as it may, there are credible studies which say that India is now home to the world's highest number of poor, at 228.9 million poor people in the country. About 75 million, that is 7.5 crores, people were pulled into poverty in one single year during the pandemic. We'll come to, during the Q&A probably we can come to, what the government claims, 33 crores were pulled out of poverty and all that. We'll come to that. I'm sure one of you would ask that. And there was one billionaire in 1992. Today, there are 166 billionaires. Many Indians are proud that we have so many billionaires, of course. And very interestingly, the government data shows, recently released data shows that in the last 10 years, even RBI had come out with figures that, a lot of jobs were created. That was contested, of course. But what is uncontested is, in 2020, we had 102 billionaires. In 2022, mind you, this is the period of pandemic. In 2020, we had 102 billionaires. In 2022, that billionaires went up from 102 to 166 during the pandemic. The World Inequality Lab tells us that the so-called billionaire Raj is much, much more unequal than the inequality that India had seen during the British Raj. And the lab says that the top 1% of the population is among the richest in the world, if you look at those countries. And this kind of an inequality in income is only behind Peru and Yemen and some other countries like that. Not the fastest growing economies of the world. This is something interesting that most of you must have come across this. 10,000 wealthiest individuals own an average of 22.6 billion in wealth. This is 16,763 times more than the average wealth of an Indian. I'll repeat this just for you to, get it. 10,000 wealthiest individuals own an average of 22.6 billion rupees in wealth. This is 16,763 times more than the average Indian's wealth. And the top 1% possesses 54 million rupees in wealth on average. And let us now look at the income. Top 1% have 22.6% of the income and 40.1% of wealth. Top 1%. Combined wealth of 100 richest Indians is $660 billion, US dollars, not in Indian rupees. That is 54.12 lakh crores. Combined wealth of 100 richest, I told you. Now, if you see the combined wealth of 10 richest Indians, it is 335.7 billion US dollars. That is 27.52 lakh crores. As I said, the combined wealth of India's 100 richest touched 660 billion. At the same time, you have a situation where 65% deaths among children under age 5 is caused by poverty, hunger. 65%. It's not that 65% of the children are dying of poverty. Of the children who are under 5 years of age who are dying, of them 65% are dying of poverty, hunger. Now, if you look at the entire economy, just 5% of Indians, they own 60% of the nation's wealth. 60% is owned by just 5%. Now, what is more important here is the bottom 50% owns only 3%. The top 5% owns 60%. Bottom 50% owns 3%. We talked about top 5%. Let's talk about top 30%. Top 30% own more than 90%, 90% of the nation's wealth. Top 1% own more than 13 times the wealth of the bottom 50%. You know, if you're living in some place like Hyderabad, probably you won't feel it in your bones. But if you travel, you will see this. It's not very hard. The only thing is that I am giving you the data because it is possible to capture this. What you see and what you feel in your bones is also now possible to capture this. It is captured. There's one more interesting thing. You know, there is a Barclays research which looks at the India's most valuable family businesses. And when they looked at India's most valuable family businesses, very interesting figure is that the Ambani family owns, their wealth is 10% of the country's GDP, not annual budget, country's GDP. 10% of the country's GDP is equivalent to the wealth of the biggest family business in the country. For some reason, normally this doesn't happen, but for some reason, Hindustan Times looked at a lot of government reports. This is government data, not the CMI, not Oxfam and not Piketty and all that. And after looking at a huge number of data sets from the government sources, the conclusion that this report draws is that 56% of Indian families reported that they don't eat 3 times a day. This is in terms of income and wealth. Then what about the contribution of the Indian people to the government treasury? You know, of the full pie of the indirect taxes or indirect tax pie, 64.3% comes from bottom 50% of the population. Now you know what does the bottom 50%'s economic situation is. And 1/3, that's about 33 point something or 35%, comes from 40% of the population. 65% comes from the bottom 50. About 33% comes from the middle 40%. Only 3 to 4%, the remaining 3 to 4% comes from the top 10% of our population. This I would call, Vikram Garu, tax terrorism. Again, another indirect tax, because indirect tax is paid by everybody. And you know, if somebody comes and tells me that I am a taxpayer, you are not a taxpayer. Everybody is a taxpayer. And you know, the bottom 50% contributes more. And then you can see how much do they contribute to the defense of the country, how much do they contribute to the security of the country, how much do they contribute to the welfare schemes of the country, whether it is housing or food or free food or railways or the highways or whatever infrastructure. It is not from the top 10% or top 1%. It is from the bottom 50% and the middle 40%. That is the lion's share. And the government goes on raiding, and what puzzles me is that time and again the government says that, you know, economy is looking up because our GST collections are increasing. If the GST collections are increasing, you can understand on whom is the incidence. So as it is, they have just 3% or 5% of the national wealth, and their incomes are 16,732 times less than the top people and all that, but their contribution is 64.3% to the exchequer. And in the same thing, the excise duties rose from 12% to 19% of the collection, and sharp decline in the corporate tax, Vikramgar, from 27.7% to 22.6%, isn't it? Just to quantify in a summary, the bottom 50% pay 6 times more indirect taxes than the top 1%. 6 times more is paid by the bottom 50%. And what does it mean? It means that what is the consequence of this? The consequence is that India accounts for about 17% of global maternal deaths and 27% of children dying below 5 years. And the poorest Indian states have the infant mortality rate poorer than some of the or most of the sub-Saharan African countries. And if you look at the National Crime Records Bureau data, you get another implication of this. The other implication of this is daily wage workers, self-employed, we'll come to self-employment, what does it mean, and unemployed. These three are the top 3 categories that resort to suicides. These are the 3 categories. Now, Rajan, you must have seen, we have a lot of change of definitions these days. Even the definition of unemployment, employment have also changed. For instance, if you are able to find 1 hour work per week, 1 hour per week. In any civilized country, your working week is about 40 hours, isn't it? I mean, there are people who say that you should work for 80 hours and all that. Let's not go into that. But 40 is a respectable, good number of working hours. Now we have Government of India changing the definition that if you have 1 hour of work per week, you are no more unemployed. So therefore, automatically your unemployment rate plummets. It's very manageable, it's good. And you can be, happily in Amritkal. So that is one consequence, where unemployed, self-employed, daily wage workers, their suicide rate is the highest. There is one more study which shows that the household, this again is culled from the government data. Household debt rose to 40% of GDP. 40% is the household debt. And household savings, which used to be pretty good in India, small savings and all that. While household debt has increased to 40%, household savings have fallen to 5%. It's not possible to save if you have this kind of a thing. But the government has a very, very creative explanation for the fall in household savings. They say, look, people are so confident that they don't feel that they should save. They are buying things. They are demanding things. But at the same time, the consumption is very low. Again, we'll come to that later. Because you know, the consumption is just about how much? 3.5% to 4%. And you know, when this is the situation of the Indian economy, of course the pandemic has even worsened it, sharpened it. According to one estimate, the bottom 50% by 2020, the income has fallen by 13%. 13% has fallen for the bottom 50%. And it's not just the income, even the wealth has fallen to 3% of the national wealth of the bottom 50%. This is the consequence. And as we talked about the unemployment, then there is suicide, etc., etc. And then people are not able to have 3 meals a day. 56% of Indian households do not have 3 meals a day. We talked about that. As a result, 67% of children between 6 and 59 months are anemic, naturally. And 33% of them are stunted. And this is our next generation, who will make India the richest country in the world by 2047. And wasted children are about 19.5%. And women are no better. Anemic women aged between 15 and 49 are 57%. 57%. And the worst thing is that even if these poor families, they want to prepare their children to face the future, and you know, the government educational establishments are no good. They want to send them to private institutions, which are, most of them are no better, but anyway, they market themselves well. You know, it is 9 times more expensive to send a child to a private institution. I'm not talking about the high-end private institutions, but the normal private institutions, than sending a child to a local government school, education institution. And when this is happening, when the indirect tax incidence is more, burden is more, when people are impoverished, their national wealth share is very low and falling, their income share is very low and falling, the corporate tax was cut from 30% to 22%. And new manufacturing firms from 25% to 15%. When this kind of a regime started, in 1 year, and you can calculate for the last 6 years or 7 years, per annum on an average, the government exchequer is losing about 1.25 lakh crores in income. They are sacrificing 1.25 lakh crores per annum in order to encourage the wealth creators, job creators. Now, when this is the situation, the RBI recently has come out with a report which says 108 or 109 million jobs, new jobs were created between, mark these years, between 2019-20 to 23-24. Now, even today, a lot of people who are observing the Indian economy are not able to understand how India could create so many jobs even during pandemic. They're not able to understand. Maybe probably they'll have to listen to the economic think tank of the government and learn from them. How do you do that kind of a thing? Now, when World Freedom Institution or World Hunger Index, Freedom Index, Press Freedom Index, etc., when they come out with reports, the government and the government spokespersons and the government establishment and these people, they completely reject them, saying that they are anti-India, they are anti-Prime Minister, anti, all that kind of a thing. But there is, I don't know if you have heard, there is one organization called the Morning Consult. Have you heard? It's an interesting organization. You must, when you go home in the night, please go into their website. The Morning Consult. It periodically it brings out a survey, and it reports that India's Prime Minister is the most popular among all the nation's leaders. And that is approved, that is hailed by the Government of India. And their sample is about 2,500. And they also say that they do online survey. When this is happening, there is another trend which is very disturbing. That is, about 85% of Indians, this is very appropriate, I wish Ajay Gandhi were here. Pew survey tells us that about 85% of Indians said they would prefer either an authoritarian figure or a military ruler. 85%. And when asked, what do you feel about the opposition? Indian respondents were the highest among 24 countries which said, what role should they have? They need not have any role. This, don't dismiss them. They're important indicators. And this is the background against which the Prime Minister time and again, especially when he inaugurated the Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, he said 75 years we have focused only or largely on rights. Now is the time that we should focus on our duties. So don't talk about rights anymore, talk about the duties. So this is briefly the economic scenario as far as the inequality is concerned, economic inequality. Let's now come to the political aspect, the majoritarian polity. Even about 10, 15, 12, 13, 14 years ago also, the defining concept of India's political discourse was secularism. Everybody used to say that they were secular, including the present ruling party. The present ruling party then used to say that they were secular, but not like the communists and the Congress. Because communists and Congress are appeasement. This is not genuinely secular. The present ruling party used to say that they were genuinely secular. Secular, but not like them. To today, the political discourse is most of the political parties and most of the political leaders, with some exceptions, the honorable exceptions, most of the political parties say that they are also Hindu, but not like them. You see, in front of us, under our noses, as we've been seeing, the discourse has shifted from we're all secular, but not like some, to we're all Hindu, but not like some. This is the sea change that has happened. When on the one side, slowly the inequality has been rising, on the other side, there are people who express that it's okay to have a strong ruler, an authoritarian ruler, or a military ruler. Opposition has what kind of a role do they have? From there to we are also Hindu, but not like them. That is the discourse, the transformation of discourse. Now, when we talk about majoritarianism, we have to talk about minorities. And the best thing to talk about minorities is not the minorities who are minorities, but whose karma bhumi and punya bhumi are here, not those minorities. But the minorities whose punya bhumi and karma bhumi is here, but not punya bhumi. You turn that side and pray. So it is certainly not your punya bhumi. That if you look at that, then you have the largest minority numerically, and also minority in many ways qualified to be called minority is the Muslim minority. Now, if you look at the Muslim minority, today is the first ever time in the last 4 years or 3 years that there is not a single person belonging to the Muslim minority in the Union Cabinet. Not a single person. And there is not a single person belonging to the Muslim minority in the parliamentary party of the present ruling party, both in Lok Sabha as well as in Rajya Sabha. And many state legislatures, starting from Gujarat to UP, if you see, not a single MLA belonging to the largest minority of India. We don't have the presence. Including Karnataka till the last election. Not only that, there is no elected member belonging to the present ruling party. Not a single candidate from that community was even given a ticket. It's not that they've given tickets and they lost. It's not that. Which means that it takes us to what is the philosophy? The philosophy used to be, there used to be a lot of debate, I'm sure most of you are aware, there used to be a debate about how do we deal with the Muslim minority in this country, within the BJP and the RSS and the Sangh Parivar, etc. I mean, people who belong to that kind of a school of thought. 3 alternatives were debated. One is Puraskar. That is appeasement. You honor them. The second one is Tiraskar. You reject them. The third one is Parishkar through Samskar. You solve the problem by reforming them. And earlier, the second option, Tiraskar, was rejected. You can't really go for a Tiraskar because there is a huge minority. But now, that is the one which is being implemented. So I told you about the cabinet, I told you about the Lok Sabha, I told you about the Rajya Sabha, I told you about state legislatures. If you look at these 3, it makes a very, very important point. The point is this, that in fact Lal Krishna Advani used to say very clearly, with you, without you, in spite of you. If you come along, well and good. If you don't come along, fine. If you oppose, even then fine. The point that the present dispensation is trying to make is that you can come to power, hold power, even if you do not take on board the largest minority in this country. It's not that you don't need them. If you need them, you take it, that's a different thing. Not only that you don't need them, but you don't want them. Even then, I can sit in the North Block, I can sit in South Block, I can sit in Rashtrapati Bhavan, I can sit in various state governments. This is the point that is increasingly made. Now, let us look at, the majoritarianism. There are many people, in fact, there are some scientists who talk about Hindus are 8th class citizens in this country. The scientists. If you look at, it was in 2019 that our Lok Sabha had 27 members of parliament belonging to the Muslim minority. The highest number, if you want, was in 1980, that was 49. It was never beyond 49. In 2024, the recently concluded elections, it's now down to 24. But if you look at, there are people who will say, is it that it should be proportionate and all that, but that's a different thing. But if at all you are looking for a proportion kind of a representation, what is the strength and what is the presence? The Muslim minority ought to have about 74. We have given representation to many sections in our society, which are deprived sections, proportionate to their number, their presence. Now, if you look at the government employment, because you see, these are important because, you see, there is the majoritarian narrative is built on threat to the majority from the minority. In resources, in jobs, and if you are poor because of them. If you don't have jobs, it's because of them. If you are not progressing, it is because of them. If you are backward, it's because of them. If your crop is not yielding well, if your farm is not yielding well, it's because of them. That kind of a narrative that you have today. But if you look at in the railways, the Muslim minority percentage of employees is 4.5. 4.5 in the Indian Railways. In the nationalized banks, it is 2.2. In the central PSUs, it is 3.3. In state PSUs, it is 10.8. In post and telegraphs, it is 3.7. And if you look at the security agencies, BSF, CRPF, CISF, etc., it's 3.6. And most of them are in lower categories, not the higher officer levels. And if you look at the IAS, IPS and IFS, foreign service, it's 3.2%. This is the situation of the largest minority in this country, if you look at their participation in our political life as well as our administrative life. And because these are not there, these are not really open, for whatever reason, there is a large percentage of self-employed among the Muslim young people or even older people. It's almost about 30%. Now, what are the kind of professions? What are the kind of establishments where they are self-employed? You know, I need not tell you. And the Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas kind of a thing. If you look at the Integrated Child Development Scheme, ICDS, the beneficiaries of that from among the Muslim, that is Muslim children, is just about 7.6. So which means almost about 96% is somebody else, or the majority. Now it's not only that. You might say that, why do they remain? Because the banks informally, it's now understood that they have what is called negative geographical areas, where there is a preponderance of Muslim population. So there in those negative geographical areas, advances are very, very few. Gita, advances are very, very few. And if there is a more than 40% Muslim population in a village, that village is unlikely to have a post office, unlikely to have a bus stop, unlikely to have access to road, bank, and things like that. And this is all across India. Maybe, some exceptions are in some of the states. It's also that, in the preschool for Muslim children is very, very difficult because Anganwadis do not have the Urdu teachers. And people who are recruited as Urdu teachers do not write or read or speak Urdu. So this is the tiraskar which has been happening. And when this has been happening and this is still happening, what you have is a bogey of puraskar. That there's a lot of appeasement, a lot of resources are being allocated to them, everything is being given to them, they need to be taught a lesson, that kind of a thing. And not only that, the majoritarian discourse is strengthened by what is happening in Bangladesh and Pakistan. Not what is happening here objectively analyzed or studied, but what is happening or what is supposed to be happening in Bangladesh and Pakistan. That is the one which strengthens the majoritarian discourse. Now, if you look at this, just counterpose Hindu minority in Bangladesh, Hindu minority in Pakistan, ill-treated. But if Hindu or Tamil minority is ill-treated in Sri Lanka, we don't talk about that. So there's a very clear kind of a majoritarian discourse that is being encouraged, tolerated, even evangelized. There is what I call, there is a mounting acceptance of or normalization on the one hand, and acceptance which is mounting of this kind of a majoritarian discourse and inequality discourse. I'll just share something with you. This is not about pre-wedding but actual wedding. There was somebody who posted the wedding card on the social media with a comment, with the disapproving comment. What kind of a vulgar display is this? That's not interesting. To me, what was interesting is there were at least about 300 to 400 comments below, and I studied them. There's not much of a variety, but the language is, there's a lot of variety. But the message was very clear. It falls into one of the following categories. What's your problem? One, they're smart, they earn and they're spending. Why are you jealous? If you want, you also earn and spend. This is the kind of, which means it is normalized, it is accepted, it is even probably celebrated. This kind of inequality. And there is one more discourse which is coming about, is if you talk about diversity, you are divisive. If you talk about uniformity, you are for unity. This is one more. And I do not have to go over the Kavadi Yatra, the injunction that you have to display the name of the owner, and then the Sengol, in the Lok Sabha, the new parliament building, where the president is not even invited. And then you also have the Dharma Sansad in Haridwar, where the open call was given for social economic boycott as well as keeping arms at home. A call to the Hindus that they should keep arms at home. Swords and banduk, whatever that is. So when you have a situation where the shop owner should disclose the name very prominently, but somebody who gives me electoral bond need not disclose the name. That's very important. And the voices that say that Hindus are a second class, third class, a scientist has gone to the extent of writing a book that Hindus today are 8th class citizens. And I do not know how that thing is calculated, but it is 8th class citizens. Now, I speak to many audiences, and after laboring for about 45 minutes or so, I get one question which is very important for us, is that, look, all that you said is fine, but I have one doubt. When Muslims can have their own countries, Christians can have their own countries, why can't Hindus have their own country? What's wrong? So you can understand the power of the discourse, of the majoritarian discourse. It has a power. Please don't think, it's a bad thing, so you can forget it. No, it's very, very powerful. That is the reason why CAA and NRC are tolerated. Now, these things are very important because they, for the first time, people might say that this is for them, that's for them, it's a far away, not for us, and nobody will be harmed, etc. But the most important thing for us to notice here is that this is a very, very special attempt to link religion and citizenship, which is not the creed of India, which is not the creed of our constitution. But once that is accepted, once that comes in, then that is normalized. Then it can extend to anything. But there is a very, very concerted effort to normalize the connection between religion and citizenship, majority religion and citizenship. That is the reason why Hindus, Buddhists and Jains from other countries are okay. They are welcome. They are harassed. But why only harassed Hindus, not anybody else? No. It is, therefore, that is the reason why the connection between citizenship and religion is tried to be established. And observing 14th August as the Partition Horrors Remembrance Day. And of course, I don't have to, it's very fresh in the memory of many people. The kind of hate speeches, not by, fringe people, but the Prime Minister himself in the last 2-3 months, especially during the run-up to the election. The Mangal Sutra, Mams, Machli, Mujra, and many other things. And International Human Rights Watch has counted that there were more than 100 hate speeches by the Prime Minister of India during the elections. More than 100. This is the majoritarian discourse normalized, increasingly accepted. There is a surge of acceptance. And what I want you to connect is that the majoritarian discourse privileging one religion over others and some sections in that religion over other sections of the religion is this second step. Because this has been building up. It is a process, as I said. Do not ever think that it is here and it stops here, it doesn't go forward. It goes on. Because there is a very, very clear scriptural, what do you call it? Scriptural sanction to this. The scriptural sanction to this is very obvious, very explicit. And within the majority community also, there are privileges. There are privileged communities. And people who champion the majoritarianism not belonging to the privileged sections may not realize today, but they will realize sooner. Because this is a society which is divided into 4 categories scripturally. And it is, somebody who recently said, one athlete in Paris, that athlete won silver, I think. And that athlete said that, I won silver because I've been reading Bhagavad Gita. And then the question inevitably is, what did athletes who won gold, what did they read? Your silver and bronze was because of Bhagavad Gita. What is the gold because of? Anyway, that's beside the point. The point is that, this is, and that Bhagavad Gita, it said that Chaturvarnyam Maya Srishtam Guna Karma Vibhagashaha Tasya Kartarapi Mam Vidvat Kartaram Apyayam. This fourfold, I have created this fourfold. The one who got you the bronze and silver has created this. And he himself had said in that particular scripture. Now, I do not have to remind you of the Purusha Suktam. Purusha Suktam very clearly had said that Brahmano asya mukhamasit bahu rajanyah kritaha uru yadasya tadvaisyaha padabhyam sudro ajayata. It's very clearly laid down that who comes from where and what is the hierarchy. And when I said this somewhere, somebody who champions the majoritarian discourse said, look, that's very, very important, because the most important thing is feet. You know, it's actually privileging the Shudra. That's what I was told. Of course, I was not sold by that. And there are n number of things, if you want to go on. So the point is that let me bring these two things together. Now, we talked about the economy, we talked about the majoritarian discourse. Inequality is justified, is tolerated, or even presented to us as cool, as desirable, because you see, after all, people who earn so much of money, what do? They have to invest. And if they invest, we get jobs tomorrow. If we don't get tomorrow, maybe day after. If not day after, maybe after a month. If not after a month, after a year. If not 1 year, after 2 years. If not 2 years, after 5 years. Isn't it? So you just have to wait. They are good people. They might, in the process, they might indulge in some sort of excess consumption, all that, but don't worry about that. You don't lose sleep over those kind of things. They will eventually, because you see, there are so many people who told us, look, somebody might have spent about 5,000 crores, but where did it go? It went to somebody who supplied flowers, gave saris, clothes and cars and fuel, a lot of other things. It all came back into the economy, isn't it? That's a wonderful explanation. So therefore, the benevolent job creators will look after you. So don't worry and don't complain about inequality. It has, what I am trying to arrive at is, it has a political counterpoint to this, a political counterpart to this. That is, the majority community, the Hindu, after all is good, very benevolent, the good people. Have they ever been aggressors? Have they occupied anybody? No. The good people. So accept them, their superiority, they will take care of you. So, and within the Hindu fold also, accept the hierarchy, they will take care of you. The Brahmin will take care of you, the Kshatriya will take care of you, the Vaishya will take care of you, they will take care of everybody else. In fact, it's a very stable kind of a social order. The reason why most countries have fallen out of the grand greater India, what is called the Akhanda Bharat, is because some of those parts have gone away from Hinduism and done away with caste and went for egalitarian. So they fell prey to all these Abrahamic religions. Not when you have the caste system, which gives stability to the society. You know your place, and your dharma is the parama dharma. Swadharma is the parama dharma. Don't aspire for anything else. That is the counterpart to the economic inequality that is being justified, tolerated, or even evangelized. So therefore, an unequal economy and an unequal society. And I must also bring it to your notice that, unequal economy and unequal society, especially if you look at the unequal society narrative, the discourse, is not new to India. It's always been there, as I narrated. It's been there for a long time. And it will always be there. Don't be under the illusion that it will disappear completely. It becomes zero. No, it won't become zero. The point, therefore, is this. When I come here to political agency and the human agency, is that it has to be kept in check. It has been there. 1818 it is there, 1820 it is there, 1840 it is there, 1850 it is there, 1940s it is there. Indian history, there was never a time where it did not advocate a strong advocacy for inequality in the society and therefore in the economy. Because in our system, economic inequality is a corollary of the social inequality. So the point is that it has to be reined in. It was reined in for a long time because we wanted to look forward. We want to look ahead. We want to move forward. But now that is for some reason discredited and it has become weaker and weaker. So now today, people who justify economic inequality, for them it becomes easy to justify majoritarianism. For people who advocate majoritarianism, it also becomes easy for them to justify economic inequality. So this is the relationship between economic inequality or inequality in the economy and majoritarianism in the polity. It is rendered easy. Now that is the reason why we have today people who think that, well, it is good to have inequality. They are the ones who are very strong supporters of the majoritarian discourse. The urban, the educated, the professional, the comfortable housing societies. They are the ones who are very, very strong champions of both economic inequality as well as majoritarian polity. Now they reinforce each other. As I said earlier in the beginning, I am not trying to establish any rigid causality between these two. But it is important to explore the relationship between these two. One more thing is that, both these economic inequality as well as majoritarian polity, that both these discourses, they have an other. For majoritarian discourse, it is the minority which is the other. And for the economic, it is the poor which is the other. The poor need not be bothered about. It's okay. Tell them that, give them 5 kilos of rice and tell them aspire. It is the poverty of aspiration. It's not, it's not anything else that keeps you there. On the other hand, when it comes to majoritarian discourse, the other needs to be obliterated. So, on the one hand, the economic other is impoverished, needs to be impoverished, need not be bothered about. Give them some kind of a little gifts. And the majoritarian, the other, needs to be completely obliterated. If you sign up for any of these, if you sign up for one, the other is easy to transition. If you sign up for this, economic, majoritarian, political is easy to transition to. And if you sign up for the majoritarian political, it is easy to transition to the economic inequality.
Parakala Prabhakar for a very insightful, even if disturbing talk about two major issues that we need to think about. I'm sure Ajay would have been provoked to engage with you on these issues. maybe we could, normally in a memorial lecture we don't have questions, but since you didn't want a man ki baat, so perhaps we can take a few questions.
It was wonderful listening to you and it was eye-opening. I'm a student of economics and I just thought, based on your talk, as per the recent elections, do you think the realization would have come both in terms of the political and the individual citizens that there can be a transition from the majoritarianism and the inequality in the near future that we can expect? And a slight extension or a different question in finances, do you think the growth in the stock market is reflective of the position of the majoritarianism and the inequality? Because now we are trading at 80,000 plus, which is about 25,000 on the day of the pandemic announcement. Thank you.
In a country like India and an economy like Indian economy, I am somebody who doesn't take the stock market very seriously. Forgive me for that. The recent elections, to some extent, yes, I think there was some kind of a realization, and that is the reason why Chocobar did not happen. You know what is Chocobar? 400 par. Because in Tamil Nadu, many people did not understand what is 400 par. When the BJP big leaders went there and said, "Ab ki bar," they all said Chocobar. So that is the reason why Chocobar did not happen.
I really appreciate the lecture on the disparities and majoritarian topic on the economy of this country. But I still have a couple of concerns. Coming from cattle shed born to capital city via Washington DC aerospace. That's little my background. The reason why I came is these concerns, please try to address either the political parties or the economists or the humanitarians or anybody who is concerned about the society. Number one, we say we are the 5th largest economy and 3rd largest purchasing power in the world. But per capita income wise, we are at 136th nation out of 191 countries at 1,80,000. So what is that required to address this problem? To see that the majority people come to that level is number one. Sorry, I take 1 or 2 minutes if you don't mind. The number 2 point is India is an agricultural country. The dependence on agriculture started from 80% to now around 55-60%. That means almost 70 to 80 crore population dependent on agriculture. The inflation rate is much higher in all these years except 3-4 years compared to the growth of agriculture in this country. The Planning Commission said 4%, we hardly reached 4%, well, almost except in 10 years or so. But inflation is higher. That means people dependent on agriculture, their living standards are continuously going. So what is our effort to see that the gap is maintained or reduced? Number 3, just one example. The employment guarantee scheme, there are about 15.1 crore people registered. Even if 300 rupees for 100 days is paid, it's like about 456,000 crores. But unfortunately, we are reducing year by year the allocations in the budget. Is only 86,000 crores. Even if we give 100 days for all the 15 crore population, in spite of the difficulties in the systems, mismanagement and all that, that is equivalent to about 30,000 rupees per person for 15 crore people. Do you know what it is? It's not even 1/6 of the per capita income of the Indian people, even though that we are trying to help. But here they say saving money ultimately comes to the investment, maybe slowly later. But the money in the hands of the poor is the greatest opportunity for circulation. What will they spend on? For health purpose, for food purpose. Do you know? We have achieved great goals. For example, milk, we are number 1, but the consumption of milk is hardly below 150 countries. Same thing pulses, same thing food grains. So this have to be addressed. Sorry, I took a little more time, but these questions, along with the present budget proposals or thinking about the future of this country, if these questions are addressed, rectification done, it's better. You know why I say money in the hands of the poor? For example, a laborer. For example, a pensioner. When we did, sorry, one second. So that money they are not spending for going to Calcutta or Delhi. They are spending for their daily requirement. The amount of circulation is much greater, many more times, for economic purpose.
Sir, the fifth largest and fastest growing economy, I have my own doubts about that. Anyway, now I don't have much time to elaborate on that. But even the growth figures that are being put out by the Government of India are also suspect. They are contested. And the present economic discourse, which favors the capital and capital intensive technologies in a labor abundant economy, I think that needs to be addressed. Without that, you cannot really get to the grips of the poverty question, the question of inequality, and these things. So I think there needs to be. I'm not only singling out one government or one party, but there is somehow everybody seems to have signed up to this kind of an economic discourse where now probably Rajan and Geeta would remember there were days when globally the discourse was new international economic order, new international information order, North-South dialogue, South-South cooperation. Where have all those things disappeared? Where have they disappeared to? Are they not relevant? Just because the Cold War has ended doesn't mean that the international economic order need not be changed, or information order need not be changed, or South-South cooperation is out of date, or North-South dialogue is out of date, and not aid but trade is not out of date, transport technology is not out of date. Why are those no more issues? What is this consensus? I mean, some people call it Washington consensus or whatnot, what have you. But why should this consensus be brought by everybody? These things also have a huge amount of implications for our own economy.
सोशल मीडिया का जो इम्पैक्ट है बिल्कुल अज्ञानता उस पर फैली हुई है। मतलब जिस तरह से लोग डिस्कोर्स को मान रहे हैं, नैरेटिव को मान रहे हैं, हमला करने पर तुले हुए हैं। मतलब मैं आपसे पूछ रहा हूँ, ये जो अज्ञानता का सफ़र चल रहा है कब ख़त्म होगा? ये जो हम एवेन्यू में बैठे हैं यहाँ पर, सब लोग पढ़े लिखे लोग हैं, यहाँ पर जानते हैं कि इससे कुछ निकल पाएगा, थोड़ी सोच हमारी शांत हो जाएगी। लेकिन जब वहाँ जाएंगे हम उस प्लेटफॉर्म पर एग्रेसिव, वहाँ पर कोई तुक नहीं बात करने का, रिलीजन के ऊपर और कई सारी चीज़ें मुद्दों के ऊपर होते हैं। तो इसकी क्या एक रेमेडी है, तोड़ क्या है इसका, मैं आपसे जानना चाहूँगा।
So just because Vikram had asked me, invited me to come stand here and speak, that doesn't mean, please take this impression out of your mind that I know everything. I don't know, but I'll share my thoughts with you for whatever it is worth. See, the social media, I must tell you this, for the last 3 days, somehow, inexplicable reasons, I get a lot of my social media feed full of Yogi Adityanath and people like that. Yes, Geeta. I don't know who. I never watched. I can understand. If you watched here and there, suggestions would come, or But there is a push somewhere. So these algorithms are suspect. And if you say something controversial, hateful, it has more traction. If you say, we're all brothers, it's not interesting. What is interesting is look what is happening in Dhaka, what's happening in Chittagong. It's interesting. So that is the kind of algorithms. Now the same thing is happening in the United States. It's happened before. So I don't know what is the solution. How do you fight back this kind of a thing? But people who are away from this social media loop, they have taken a very wise decision during these elections. People who are mired in this are the people who have landed us here.
I've got two questions, sir. First one is, you said that the Indians lack aspiration.
Aspiration of party members of the Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Council, he had said it, very bright mind, so-called.
But we don't aspire to be like, Bill Gates, etc., etc.
That is also his construction.
Yeah, but at the same time, when we talk about the aspiration of Indians, my God, the way the startups are these days, and if you see majority of the very major companies in the United States are headed and run by Indians. So the aspiration level of an Indian is pretty phenomenal. I'm one of those who left India and aspired to success, and by the way, was successful in the United States also. But I feel, rather than the aspiration aspect of it, I feel the opportunity is where the problem is. I'd like to hear your views on that. The opportunity in India, which is now, of course, coming about.
You see, when you're talking about, the American companies, and very many Indians are heading American companies there as well as here, and all that, this is fine. But, if you look at the overall picture, please pay attention here. We have been trying to make India a part of the global supply chain. And, if Google comes and opens an office here, it's great. If X comes and opens an office here, it's great. And I know some politicians who would, display that as a badge of honor. I got Google, I got this, I got that, I got this company and that company, and all that kind of a thing. But the point is this. The point is, why is it that, we want to mend our academic courses, our training, our skill set, our universities, our syllabuses, everything, in order to prepare a large number of workforce, a cheap labor force for those companies. Is that the solution? Is that the solution? Is that the aspiration? Or can there be another aspiration, a parallel aspiration, a contending aspiration, which is much better for India and for the Indian people? That's my question. I have no answer, but this is something which I really think about this.
Yeah, got it. Now, your views. Yeah. Your views on the current situation, etc., especially speaking about the economy and the situation in India, a lot of it has to do with the finance ministry, of course, and that's at close quarters to you in your personal life. And I don't expect you to answer this if you don't want to. But I'm sure the dialogue.
No, you are trying to get me into trouble.
No. so I think I'll just leave it there then.
My question for you is, at the current pace of economic growth, how many years do you think would it take for India to reach where China is in the size of economy and eventually emerge as the world's largest economy? Thank you.
There are two ways of, I mean, why do we have to, look at when do we reach America, when do we reach the stage of the Chinese, and when do we reach Singapore, when do we reach Korea? No, that is one. You see, when you look at an economy, there are two ways of looking at an economy. One is the temporal. Where were we in 47? Where are we now? The other one is spatial. Where is India? Where is Korea? Where is China? Where is US? Where is that? And where is Singapore? Where is Hong Kong? And all that kind of a thing. But I would rather look at the temporal and see where were we and where are we, and what is the price that those economies have paid and are paying today in terms of freedoms, democracy, the social well-being and all those kind of things, and not merely measuring the GDP and per capita income. Per capita income and GDP are, if you do not take into account the distribution and quality of life and other things, the pollution, so many other things, they make no sense at all. But our present discourse has compelled us to focus on these numbers. That is $19 trillion economy. This is $23 trillion economy. You're only this much, and our leaders and our thought leaders and political leaders trying to say, look, we are also on the path, and we are fifth largest, and we are that, and we're fastest growing, and it's become now a fashion to say that we are 7.2, 7.8, and there are people. I don't want to name them, but there are people in some states who are saying that, I would achieve 15% growth in my state. 15%. Can you believe, can you imagine 15%? What does it mean? 15% growth. That because they just don't understand what it is and what it means. If suppose myself and Geeta have 100 rupees as our economy GDP, that is, our per capita income is 50 rupees each, isn't it? But then what if Geeta earns 9 rupees and I earn 1 rupee? I have overtaken the United Kingdom and become the fifth largest economy. Okay. Now, we all know that the United Kingdom is a developed economy by any measure. On the one hand, our leaders tell us that we have become the fifth largest economy, overtaken the United Kingdom, and on the other hand, at the same time, they tell us that by 2047 we will become a developed economy. Now, today you overtake a developed economy, but you take another many years, 2 decades or more, to become a developed economy. What does it mean? I'm still trying to wrap my head around this.
And also about majoritarianism. One aspect which I think you didn't touch was the budget allocation from the center to the states. We find majoritarian states getting a larger share, non-majoritarian states getting a much smaller share, which has terribly adversely affected the growth and development in these so-called non-majoritarian states.
I couldn't, because as it is, I've spoken too much. I think I've taken a lot of time, but that is an important point in the sense, there is also a subversion of federal characteristic of this country. It's being very systematically subverted, not only in terms of political, but also in terms of finances and economy. And that's where it fits in what you say. For instance, the government says that, you can't really do much, we don't have much freedom in terms of devolution of resources. Whatever the Finance Commission stipulates, we have to do that. That's correct. But this government has found a very, very clever way, because it has increased the collection of cesses and surcharges. Now, cesses and surcharges do not form part of the divisible pool of resources. Now, with this cesses and surcharges, they encourage the what is called the double engine sarkar. I will stop here. I mean, there's so much to talk about on this. I take your point. That's very.
One of them being, do you think in the course of our lifetime we're going to be seeing a more equitable society? Because based on everything that you've said and that we've seen, we're only headed in the other direction. And apparently everyone wants to want that. But do you think it's possible that India could become a country where it's pretty income equal? And also, do you think we could ever see politics being played out, but not in the context of religion, like move away from that?
You know, there are two ways. One is to dislike or oppose or be uncomfortable with inequality. The other thing is to champion inequality. The two things. Now, I would rather be with somebody who doesn't like inequality, who opposes inequality, but who has no clue on how to achieve equality or, get away from inequality. I would rather be with him than somebody who says inequality is good. There are two things. Inequality, can we see an equal India? I don't think equal India is going to just come that way. My point is, can we work for equal India? Can we? Should we? Is that a value? Do we cherish that value? I think if all of us resolve and convince everybody else in this country that India should be equal, because you see, India is very different in the sense there, as it is, as I told you about, there's so many social inequalities, religious inequalities, caste and region, religion, so many things. In addition to that, if you also have economic inequality, all these inequalities are accentuated, they become very, very sharp. So, in order to have these inequalities not so sharp, to blunt the impact of those inequalities, which, they might take a long time to address those, but at least this has to be addressed. So that is what we should work for. It again has a political agency, has a human agency.
Please resume your midweek matters, which is something which I really enjoy. The question is this. You are, sir, if I may say so, preaching to the already converted. Okay, I am an example of one who is already converted. You are preaching to me, and I guess to most of the people here. How do we have a dialogue with, if I may say so, the other side? Or are we condemned to live the rest of our lives in mutual hostility and incomprehension? That is my question.
I'll try and resume. I've been running around quite a lot after the book had come out. There were many big book discussions and various towns and cities in the country. So that is the reason why I took a break. So, as far as preaching to the converted is concerned, I'm sure Vikram Garu has not barred anybody from coming here. It is open. One. Another thing is, this one, this is going to reach. It's not just these. And it's going to be there on record. It's going to contest. And I have directly, indirectly made a lot of references, and when I made those references, those people will understand to whom I was referring to. Okay. So what I did today is formulate a very, to whatever extent possible, a robust contestation of unequal economy and majoritarian polity discourse, and also challenged the champions of those two. And I've also been going, I mean, I'm very pleased to see a lot of young people here. I'm also going to a lot of campuses, because these days campuses, students are not coming out. We have to go there, and I've been going. So if you look at these things, I'm not addressing merely to the converted, but it is also important to address the converted, because the converted feel doubtful, because you see, today the majoritarian discourse is so strong that at times people like us are gaslighted. Sometimes we develop self-doubt. You see, every religion has its own country. Why can't Hindus have their own country? It looks very persuasive, isn't it? So, in that sense, even talking to the converted once in a while also is important.
Hello, sir. I suppose these two important things, that unequal economy and also majoritarian, the polity, and you said that both of them have the other. And in this case, the other happens to be common with Muslims. Muslims are also poor. At the same time, they are also at the receiving end for the majoritarian rule. So do you find any solution to that? Because every day there is a battle between communities. There are cow vigilante groups, there are hate crimes, a lot of things are happening. So when you have to battle on one hand the unequal economy and also the majoritarian rule, how do we live life?
You see, we need to go on talking about the unjustness of these two, because you see, India, the project India is not a majoritarian state. It would have been very easy for our first generation national leaders immediately after independence or even before independence to make India into a Hindu Rashtra, a Hindu state. It would have been very easy, and they would have been a bigger Hindu Hridaya Samrat, whatever. They would have been even bigger, but they did not give in to that kind of a temptation. They said India belongs to everybody. And if you allow me a couple of minutes more, Vikram Garu. See, imagine the Constituent Assembly. Constituent Assembly was formed sometime in December 46, and worked up to November 49. And that was the time when the country was partitioned. Independence came, and hundreds of dead bodies went from this side to that side of the border on both east and west. Hundreds of dead bodies came from the other side. Delhi was surrounded by innumerable number of refugee camps. People, who were comfortable, who owned lands, businesses and shops and karkhanas, factories and all that. They just came with just, what they were wearing or what they could carry in a bag. And mother, father, wife, children, 2 children went that side, 2 children went this side. They were all orphans. They were all crying. And people who were working in the Constituent Assembly were also part of the government, most of them. Patel, Nehru, Azad and people like that. And after they finished their work in the government, they used to go into the Constituent Assembly to debate what kind of a constitution we should have for our country. And when they were going, they had all these refugees and refugee camps and tents and all that, and all those people used to come, talk to them, tell them, you know, what kind of atrocities they were subjected to, what kind of victims they have become, you know, what did they lose, what did they lose, and you know, how many people they lost, how many people they were killed, and that the tempers were so high. Just imagine. At that point of time, every day, day after day, month after month, for about just a month short of 3 years, they went into the Constituent Assembly and they said, India belongs to everybody. It is unimaginable feat. That is the legacy of India project. When they said that time, can't we say this now? Can't we work for it now? Can't we say that, look, this country is not, you know, let anybody say in any country, anywhere in the world, it could be Armenia, Azerbaijan, you know, Germany or Bangladesh or Pakistan, anybody, let anybody say anything. But India did say that it belonged to everybody. India now should say that it belongs to everybody. And people say that, people ask me sometimes, Vikram Garu, that look, the world over, right wing is on the rise. Can we really escape this? I said, look, we can. When the entire world was under colonial domination, it was India which broke loose for the first time. We showed the path. And let anything be on the rise anywhere in the world, India can roll it back. India can. I'm not saying this as inevitability, but understand, we have to work for it. Because this is, you know, I have so many people, so many friends who even 6, 7, 10 years ago, I did not suspect them of, you know, the majoritarian, I did not suspect. But today they are wonderful, huge, robust champions of majoritarian discourse, that they want India for Hindus. But when you confront them, do you want India only for Hindus? No, they can also stay. Other people also can stay, it seems. No, that is not the India project. India project is much bigger. Let us be worthy of that project. Let us be worthy of those leaders, Rajgopalachari, Jawaharlal Nehru, Maulana Azad, Sardar Patel, and number of people. They all went into it, and please don't be under the impression that there were no voices which argued for Hindu Rashtra within the Constituent Assembly. There were, even those days. You know, this started, Rajan knows very well, this started in Pune, immediately after the Peshwas. So, I mean, I don't want to name names, because there were very illustrious people who were, you know, championing these causes. And if somebody asks me, aren't they also, you know, somebody so and so, are they not patriots? Are they not freedom fighters? Yes, they are also patriots. They are also freedom fighters. But what am I concerned? I am concerned about what are the implications of their social thought to an independent India. That is why I like some, I don't like some. I celebrate some, I don't celebrate some. That's it.
Hello, sir. Sir, myself, Ishwanta, heard about you and never saw you, but this is the first time. And second thing, I am so happy to see an independent India here with full of youngsters, not because of their age, but with of thoughts and also energy to come here. So glad to see that movement here. And coming to other point also, I didn't heard about this Manthan and also Ajay sir, but I feel the thoughts you provoked to me is the point where Ajay sir came to me in my thoughts to ask you these things. The first one is, sir, you have begun this discourse with some numbers. So first question is, being an UPSC aspirant, I am reading all this stuff from newspapers also. So from many years I have been touching with these thoughts. Sir, as you started our discussion with that, what to believe in those numbers? Are those real or not? The same question came to me after seeing the data of CMIE or any other stuff which we have discussed. We are assuming that that is true. Sir, as a beginner, which I am standing at my 1/4 of my life at 25, or the people who wanted to listen this question, sir, which numbers I have to take? Sir, I think like me, many people are vulnerable in a position to choose which ideas from the newspapers or from the media or from the people like you. Alienism, what are the true facts to be believed and what are the data? Just like you mentioned, no sir, 2,500 is very small sample. Until I know that, I felt it is true. But how can these people become independent with that? So second one, we have spoken a lot about inequity or inequality of India. Sir, I feel there is a new dimension which to be addressed, sir, because I am from an engineering graduation. Sir, after graduation, most of the people, I am from mechanical engineering background. Sir, immediately engineering ayipina ventane. Why there is a lot of push towards software, sir? After studying 4 years from various backgrounds, either from parents or from the society, you need to take a job. And you need to take a job which is given by the economy, that is software. I can understand the situations of the country.
Question.
The question is, sir, why there is much debate about this picking up of dreams, sir? We are talking about that guy, that person who spoken about poverty of aspiration. I think we should talk about poverty of to be respected dreams, sir. We have a dreams, but none of us are talking, and this rhetoric inequality in India is never been touching on these dreams also. So how can we drive this rhetoric into the people? Thank you so much for the opportunity.
I just want to...
You said you are preparing for the UPSC, civil services. Unless you want to later get into the civil services by lateral entry, if you want to clear the exam, you need to, the less critical you are, the more chances you have. Okay. I'm not discouraging you, but if that is your goal, that's a different thing. But then I hope one day even the bureaucracy also could be rewarded for critical thinking. I hope. You see, the pressure on youngsters to get into software, to get into a multinational corporation, etc. I mean, I can understand because they are good pay, well-paying jobs and all that. Maybe you can go abroad and all that. That's fine. That's not. But that's not your fault or your parents' fault. That is because somewhere this consensus is not challenged, that we need to trim our sails in order to suit the requirements of the corporations in the West. Whatever we are doing, if they tell you to get into software, in other words, they are saying that you get into software to become cheap labor for them, isn't it? But I'm not finding fault with them. That's the best thing under the circumstances. But we also need to reorient our economy, reorient our economic thinking, and challenge this.
Yeah, I think we're already at the end of the program, but I can see that my responses to your request there is unequal. So anyway, this gentleman is here. I would like him to be the last question.
I think I know you, but you may not know me because you keep meeting a lot of people. Your topic was interesting. The subjects you covered, very appropriate. And thank you for all the insights. And in fact, I'm one of those who believes India is for everyone. Okay? And you also spoke something about the causality, and you said, I don't want to discuss causality at this moment. That was your initial first few minutes you said that. But I had a personal experience. This is not related to unequal economy, but it is related to majoritarianism. My personal experience was I was standing on tank bund, which all of us are aware. And I don't know when it happened, but the largest minority community had taken to the roads after the ex-chief minister's million march or something. I was watching from Tangband, and it sent a shiver up my spine. people were armed with knives, lathis, and everything. And I heard this with my ears. वक्त आ गया, घर से बाहर निकलो, काटो, मारो, पीटो, तबाह कर लो. I got scared, I'm telling you honestly. I said, if I had spoken a word, probably today I wouldn't have been here. See, when we talk of majoritarianism, I fully understand what you're saying, what you're coming from. I advocate that. But I think we need to educate India as a whole. But unfortunately, most of our education goes to only those, like some gentleman said, to the converted. So how do we address the entire Indian community, irrespective of the religion? I had to quote this personal experience. I'm not making it up. I was there. So your comment on that, please.
You asked a very difficult question. You know, I was expecting a very difficult question when you started saying that, you know, you liked the way I said and, you know, you liked the topic and all that. Then I could see that, you know, you're about to ask me a very difficult question. It is a difficult question in the sense, you know, I cannot tell you how do we address the entire population of India. I am trying to make a small effort wherever I get a chance to address people. I'm trying to do that. I cannot, as they say, you know, you cannot heat up the entire ocean. You know, you can, piece by piece, you can do that. And mind you, this is how the majoritarianism also worked and where we landed here. That is the reason where we landed. Let me share one more. I'm sure most of you might have read Albert Camus' La Peste. What's the translation? La Peste? No, not outside. The plague. You know, it's interesting that there's a plague in that particular town. It was shut down, cut off, and you know, many people died, and slowly it abated, it came to normal. And when it became normal, the entire town started celebrating. You know, they all came onto the roads, they were dancing, they were celebrating. But Dr. Ryu, the main character in the plague, he doesn't celebrate. He says, the virus never dies. The virus never dies. It can wait in the kitchen sink, in the book rack, under the pillow, under the cot, in the windowsill, and the virus strength is, it can wait. It can wait for 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 50 years, 60 years, 100 years. It can wait for 100 years also. And when the immunity is down, it raises its head. And that's what happened. It waited for 100 years, Vikram Garu. And slowly and slowly and slowly it worked and it worked and it worked and it worked. And here we are. So if you expect very quick results, you know, tomorrow with this election, the entire majoritarian thing is gone, and you know, there's constitutional values are you know, reinstated. No, it won't happen. You know, my question is this: when there is a dedicated, disciplined, hard-working, prepared to put in, you know, enormous amount of work without expecting immediate recognition, positions, publicity, etc., etc. When there is a huge army working against the constitutional values, where is the army that works to defend the constitutional values? If there is an army which works which puts in hard work, prepared to wait long years, not just long hours, but long years of work to defend the constitutional values, all of us can go and sleep peacefully. Till then, no.